The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the network, producers, advertisers, or hosts, and belong solely to those who make them. Truth Frequency is a non-biased and non-partisan platform committed to presenting all aspects of the truth and allowing you, the listener, to decide for yourself.
31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start.
This is David Icke, and you're tapped into the Truth Frequency with Chris and Cherie.
It's called being in the zone. It's called, being lucky. It's called having everything go your way.
When you deal with computers, you deal with ones and zeros. And the only way that you can make a computer more powerful is to expand the consciousness of the computer.
Well, it's something bigger than ourselves, and that's got to be said.
That has to do with the self-image that people have.
Just kind of your ego being swept aside, or being kind of stomped on, or being swatted like a fly.
People are waking up to that en masse in such an incredible way, and it's something that I guess when we're involved in this, we maybe lose the forest for the trees, but it really is and truly happening at a societal level.
It is being able to take what feels like ordinary human energy and mastering extraordinary power, even with a single person in a society with this kind of power. We call it the X factor.
The universe is not only stranger than you imagine, the universe is stranger than you can imagine.
And guess what, guys? Here we are.
And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, once again on American Freedom Radio and simulcasting on Polygraph Radio. This is your host, Chris Gio, and I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host, Cherie, and you are tapped into the Truth Frequency. It is Monday, August 30th, 2010, and we have a special presentation for you today. Joining us in a few minutes is Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm very honored that he agreed to come on the broadcast. I've got a lot of questions for him. We're going to delve into a little bit about the physics of consciousness and maybe get into some UFOs too. He's the head of the Disclosure Project. He's the head of the Orion Project as well. So it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation, especially with all this rhetoric that's been going around that these aliens are out to get us. It was Hawkins, I think it was, that said that...
Stephen Hawking, yeah.
Yep, Hawking, that's it. Who said that aliens are coming to get us and we all have to fear these aliens. And it's really a fear-based situation that they're trying to bring forth. And Bill Cooper talked about this as well. And, I've always wondered about Bill because I read Behold a Pale Horse. There was a lot of UFO info there. But then I heard that he actually denounced all of that, and I finally found the documents where he did actually denounce all of that and said,
cool.
You know what, I was completely wrong. There's no benevolent beings that are coming to get us, and so the real threat is this New World Order. And I think what they want to keep us from is this global shift in consciousness, which we're experiencing, and we should be experiencing here in 2012. It's the dawning of this global shift in consciousness.
I would like to think that they're benevolent. On the one hand, you have to look at the fact that they are more technologically advanced than we are. So maybe their consciousness is expanded and they are able to communicate with us, and they don't want to be mean and they don't want to invade us and hurt us. But on the other hand, you have to look at how much the New World Order has been able to accomplish just by tricking us into thinking that they work for us. So both sides of the coin you got to look at.
Absolutely, absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, everybody tuning in, I know we have a lot of listeners from India, Europe, all around the world. We actually have a poll on the front page of truthfrequencyradio.com. We're thinking about moving the broadcast, the normal broadcast, from Sunday at 9 p.m. Central to Saturday, 7 o'clock Central, so we can just have a better time for everybody to listen and participate in the chat, because that's the whole point of the show is the interaction between us and the listeners.
Absolutely.
And that's what really makes a great show, in my opinion.
I think so too. It wouldn't even be a show if it weren't for you guys. Really, y'all are great listeners.
Absolutely. So far, everybody's voting for Saturday at 7, so we're going to get with Danny, see if he's going to let us do that, and if so, we might go ahead and move the broadcast back to the other time. But anyways, we're going to see you on the other side with Dr. Stephen Greer, Chris and Cherie on truthfrequencyradio.com. American Freedom is, of course, our network. back at truthfrequencyradio.com. Of course, going out through the airwaves on American Freedom Radio. And joining us on the line, we have the legend himself, Dr. Stephen Greer, the director of the Disclosure Project and the Orion Project. He was the first to coin the term close encounters of the fifth kind and teach people how to initiate contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. He's written several books, his latest being Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge back in 2006. And he's also a lecturer who's appearing at the CSETI conference in Rio Rico, Arizona in just a few months from now. And that's going to be an absolutely amazing conference. I mean, amazing lineup. Dr. Greer, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
You have the conference coming up in just a couple of months. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we get into it?
Yes, well, it's titled Contact, Countdown the Transformation, and it's in Rio Rico, Arizona, which is south of Tucson, Arizona, from October 2nd to the 4th, and we're going to have Richard C. Hoagland of the Enterprise Mission, and myself and Colin Andrews, who coined the term crop circle, and Dr. Ted Loader, who's our PhD scientist for the OrionProject.org, who is going to be talking about the new energy developments and alternative energy that deal with a lot of the classified areas of energy and propulsion that the public don't know about and need to know about, because that's really the future of freedom from the Mideast oil cartels.
I completely agree. We definitely need to get off of the oil, but I think it's going to take a global shift in consciousness to do that, where we realize that there's more technology out there, and everybody realizes that there's no disclosure. One thing that I heard you speaking with Richard Hoagland, and you mentioned the physics of consciousness, and that really just grabbed my interest, because that seems to echo exactly what we talk about on this broadcast, but you break it down from a scientific perspective rather than a spiritual perspective. Can you enlighten our listeners a little bit with that?
Well, yes, I mean, it's both. And we, if you go to cseti.org, cseti.org, we have a lot of information about this, because whether you're looking at the ancient Vedas and the teachings in consciousness or modern physics, there's a nexus where an understanding of what I would call non-locality or conscious awareness as it exists beyond linear space-time. And it does have to do with the physics, because when you're dealing with these energy systems that deal with so-called zero-point energy or free energy, you're really tapping into a hyperdimensional physics that's very related to these other dimensions. And consciousness is, of course, the foundation, I think, of what all of space-time matter is emanating from. And I mean, some people would call this a supreme being, but in reality, rather than anthropocentrically sort of framing it in that way, I would say that the conscious mind itself is always an infinite field of awareness and energy, and it actually then passes through various dimensions all the way into space-time and matter. And so the studies that have been done are very clear on this. Dr. John at Princeton's Engineering Anomalies Research Lab and I spoke years ago about this, that in fact even what we think of as inanimate objects can be affected by thought and awareness, that there is no place in the cosmos where consciousness isn't the primal operative paradigm. And so this does inform sort of where we're heading as a civilization, and this understanding you get to very quickly once you start dealing with these new energy systems that deal with transdimensional or interdimensional systems. And in fact, we have found that there is a nexus where all of those areas of study come together, where you want to look at it spiritually or in terms of science. There's very much a science of consciousness that is the foundation, I think, of the whole next millennium of human evolution on this planet.
Well, you're absolutely right. I've always said that science is the how, it's not the who, and they both go hand in hand.
Right, exactly. And in fact, you know, what we're finding amongst the more open-minded and forward-looking scientists all over the world, and this has been going on now for 30 or 40 years, is that they're stumbling across phenomena that can only be explained by a conscious universe. And when I was talking some years ago with astronaut Ed Mitchell, who was the sixth man to walk on the moon, he and I were talking about this, and in terms of the universe itself being a conscious hologram, and that, in fact, every point in space and time is accessible to any other point in space or time through this integrating aspect of conscious mind. And this is very Vedic, by the way, if you look at the ancient Sanskrit teachings of the Vedas. And before I was a medical doctor, I was actually a meditation teacher and used to actually tutor people in Sanskrit and this sort of thing. And what I found is that there's a great deal of concordance between these higher levels of consciousness and understanding and the kind of physics that we're coming into. And I think that this is certainly known by any interstellar civilization. One of the things I point out, and actually I just wanted to correct your introduction, the most recent book that's come out in the last 12 months is called Contact, Countdown to Transformation, and it has a summary of the 18 years of contact our research team has had, and you can get that at disclosureproject.org. But that book has a DVD with it that shows these extraordinary trans-dimensional craft coming right into the site with us, and tones and all kinds of amazing phenomena. And it really points to the kind of physics that we're talking about, and which I think probably very ancient peoples had observed and maybe didn't understand it scientifically, but we're at the point where we're going to actually launch into a scientific understanding of this.
I think that's amazing. But what's more amazing to me is that how long they've known about this and kept it from the public.
Yeah, well, I got involved with this. As you may know, my uncle designed the lunar module. He was the senior project engineer at Grumman that built the lunar module. And we did go to the moon, by the way. However, when we went to the moon, what happened is that what actually transpired was hidden from the American people. In fact, I've spoken to close relatives of both Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin who have confirmed to me that when we landed, and of course I knew this already, that there were extraterrestrial vehicles there watching us and watching what we were doing. And I think that this is something which, because I'm in Washington a great deal, a lot of people kind of whisper about, but no one wants to talk about it. It's sort of the orphan subject because people are afraid of being ridiculed. But in reality, when I've met with members of the Senate and senior members of the Senate Intelligence Committee or people at the Pentagon, they take this very, very seriously. They just don't want to talk publicly about it. And one of the problems that keeps them from talking about it is the secrecy you're talking about, and that is sort of complete subversion of the Constitution. And what's happened is exactly what Eisenhower warned us about when he said, beware the military-industrial complex. And what he was talking about, he wasn't anti-military, he was a five-star general. He was talking about the fact that there were these transnational corporate interests that would absolutely betray us and keep a lot of things secret that we should know about, and that would subvert our way of life and our democracy. And actually, I live very near Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, and if you look at what Thomas Jefferson wrote in the early founding days of the United States, he warned about the unchecked power of corporate interests trumping the interests of the people. And, Thomas Jefferson was extremely prescient in his warning. And, of course, unfortunately, these warnings have not been heeded adequately. We're trying to correct that through the disclosureproject.org. But I think that what most people don't realize is that the secrecy isn't because they think people are going to hurl themselves off the Brooklyn Bridge because we're not alone in the universe. It's because the science and physics that we start talking about would completely
erase,
change the sort of what I call the petro-Nazis lock on the world. I mean, you look at how this world is running or being run into the ground, and it's because of the transnational corporate energy, oil, and petrodollar financial interests. It isn't what's possible technically. I mean, I recently met with a man who's one of the highest-ranking people in the Department of Defense lab system, and he told me that he has seen these sort of so-called free energy and anti-gravity systems. And the problem is that the reason these haven't been disclosed, and the reason we're still burning oil in our cars and heating our homes that way and burning coal for 50% of our electricity in this country, is because there's about a $600 trillion base of commodities that are traded on what's in the ground in coal and oil and gas, and they don't want that system to change to where every single person, we the people, would have energy for our house and our car that you can't put a meter on.
Right.
And this is not a conspiracy theory.